still, it's never been a better time to be in the wealth management business, but the business is changing. And it's important that you have a partner that can't predict all the change, but has a sense of the trends driving change and can react to make sure that you as the advisor have the model, the resources, the support in order to take advantage of offense, take advantage on offense of those changes and not be on your heels and being forced to react to it.
Welcome to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa, brought to you by Elite Consulting Partners. It's the only podcast offering unfiltered guidance and the direct advice for all things concerning financial advisors, RIAs, and the practitioners in the wealth management business. And now, welcome to the show.
Hey everybody, welcome to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. I'm your host, Frank LaRosa, and I'm joined on a very early, rainy day, both here in New Jersey and in Boston, where my special guest, Mike Durbin, the CEO of Cetera, is on the line with us today, and he's fighting the same weather I think I'm fighting. So Mike, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you, Frank. Delighted to join. It's better than walking the dog right now because it's rainy, as you pointed out. But I'm over caffeinated, so I'm compensating for the rain. But delighted to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Awesome. I appreciate it. This has been something I've wanted to do for a while. I know you took over Cetera. I guess it's been a couple of years now. Seems like almost like yesterday. And this is really great. So I'm going to have you sort of take us down a path, a little bit of an inside baseball on your experience coming into Cetera. I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about the partnership with Genstar, because I think that's really important. I believe it's a unique situation. I was working with Cetera now for a long time, and remember when they first came in, and there was a lot of concern, and here we go, they're going to buy it and flip it and all this other stuff, and it's been years, way longer than the average PE firm stays in. So maybe just have you talk about that. But for my listeners, again, these are conversations that are designed to be just general conversations about the industry. As they're not scripted. We have a couple of questions that I would like to ask Mike, but these are not scripted. So we're going to take this in any type of direction. We hope that it's educational for everybody, and ultimately, Mike, I hope that they walk away from this with an understanding of not just you. It'd be great to know you a little bit better, right? But really Cetera, because Cetera, as one of the largest independent broker-dealers out there now, there's a lot of different things about Cetera that people may not know. There's a lot of different affiliation channels, and we're not going to be able to cover all of that today, but I'd like to be able to just touch on a couple things. So let's get into it, and why don't we just start with, who is Mike Durbin, right? I've gotten to meet you a couple of times and have some great conversations, and your background is really unique, and I think it's why I think things are going the way they're going at Cetera. I mean, there were some great things before you got there. I don't want to burst your bubble or anything like that. But I think that your background and your insight and your vision has been really good and enlightening for me, having had a chance to talk to you several times now. So just give us some little color on who Mike Durbin is.
Yeah, appreciate that. Well, the color would be beige or a modest dull gray, if that's the color on Mike Durbin. But I'll keep it quick. I did join Cetera in the spring of 23, so 2.5+ years. I agree. It feels like yesterday. Pretty incredible. But prior to that, 2.5 years ago, prior to joining Cetera, I worked for 14 years at Fidelity in Boston, and moved my family to Boston from the New York area, where, prior to Fidelity, I worked 18 years at Morgan Stanley and its predecessors. In fact, I was in investment banking in Dean Witter, which probably sounds like a number of words that not many people string together, but there was a really good investment bank at Dean Witter many, many years ago that then was merged into Morgan Stanley. And I had a trajectory that took me up and through wealth management for many years at Morgan Stanley before going to Fidelity. And to me, Frank, I don't know if it's enlightening or if I think it's helped me, but what's clear is that, amazingly for in my 35th year of working, from when I started at Dean Witter / Morgan Stanley, I've always done something directly involved with human financial advisors. So even at Dean Witter, the investment banking analyst role I had on day one, I was in a group that was originating and underwriting packaged products that were sold through the Dean Witter financial advisor force at the time. So believe it or not, that was publicly traded REITs, master limited partnerships, closed-end mutual funds, open-end mutual funds, structured products. And so, really from day one, it was really at that point product market fit with financial advisors. And I never left, the financial advisor space as my stakeholder, if you will. When I went to Fidelity, I immediately joined Fidelity to run the REA custody business. And then over the ensuing 14 years, did a bunch of other roles at Fidelity, but again, always with and through financial advisors, whether that was custody, clearing, the asset management, distribution, and marketing, division that I was involved with. But ultimately, which I'll close this off, I sort of had this yearning to get back on the side of the table with advisors. When I left that side of the table at Morgan Stanley, where I was, part of the management team running a large, and successful advisor force at Morgan Stanley. I left that to go have an incredible run at Fidelity, where I was really a service provider into those channels and those advisor communities, and sort of had a yearning to get on the other side of the table back with those advisors, because my view was, maybe we'll get into this, my view was there's an incredible decade plus of change and growth and disruption and value capture to be had. And by the way, Fidelity is going to get tons of it, because of those wonderful businesses that they have. But I wanted to do something that sort of got my hands directly dirty with advisors again.
Yeah, and that was my impression when I first met you early on. I tend to be a little bit reluctant, obviously, when people come into the space, right? And I was really impressed with your knowledge of the space, and candidly, your candor. When we go to these meetings, for those of you that don't know and listen, we go to these recruiting forums and all this other stuff, and eventually people say, do you have anybody have any questions? And generally the audience looks at me and one other person to ask the more difficult, challenging, awkward questions. And I don't disappoint. I appreciated your responses and your answers, and like, okay, he knows what he's talking about. Because I've been in those rooms with advisors, and I'm like, with leaders, and I'm like, this person doesn't really know what's going on.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. Look, there's always, there's always so much to learn about the broad industry that we're in, because it's changing all the time. But I mean, this sounds a little cliche, but I deeply believe it. Everybody loses if we're not aligned on exactly what we're doing and exactly what we can and can't do. If anyone in our little ecosystem is misrepresenting who we are or what we do, everyone loses. So I do try to start with candor, because it's just efficient.
Yeah.
And
I know.
I could try to convince you, that I walk on water. I'm going to say, no, Frank, I will sink. I'm not a very good swimmer, So that gets tested all the time. It's a competitive market out there, but we try to keep it, transparent in the interest of efficiency.
Yeah, no, it's funny you say that. I was having a conversation with my wife the other day about something going on, and she's like, basically, why do you have to be so direct? I'm like, because I don't know how any other way to do it. It's the most efficient way to have a conversation.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how. It's a waste of my time and energy to try to read between the lines with what you're saying or not saying. So I'm just going to say how I feel, and I expect you to tell me, and we can get to the solution much faster that way.
Right. You got it. You got it.
Anyway, let's move on from that. But so when you came in, obviously there was a lot going on. There was a lot going on, and more importantly, you have a partner, right, called Genstar. For those of you that may not know, it's a private equity firm that's taken a stake. I'll say taken a stake and then a restake. Maybe you can talk about that. In Cetera. Talk to me about like what it must have been like as you took over. One, taking over this sort of large entity with multiple sleeves and affiliation options, right? How did you get your arms around that? And then what was the experience like with Genstar, and how is that partnership going and going to go?
Yeah. Great question. There's a lot packed in there, Frank. So So look, the what attracted me to Cetera was really the three bagger. It was the platform and breadth of capability that Cetera already had in the industry, and I'll come back to that. You're alluding to it with this sort of range of affiliation models. So the platform, the offering, the value proposition of Cetera was absolutely, a number one. Number two was the momentum that the Cetera team had underway in bringing that, broad platform to market and sort of building some momentum of growth behind it. Again, we'll come back to that. But third it was Genstar Capital. I knew some of the principles behind Genstar Capital before joining, so there was some familiarity. Certainly, I was well aware of their record of being really good professional investors and leaders of these, portfolio companies of theirs, and ultimately realizing value, when those companies ultimately do exit. And so that sort of stew of those three ingredients was really, really important to me and made the decision pretty easy. As you mentioned, what I find really fascinating, unique and differentiating, those are synonymous, is that while, as we said, Genstar's been the super majority owner of Cetera for now, call it 7 years, they fundamentally re-underwrote the business a second time just under 2 years ago. So there was a first 5-year hold period where Cetera was held principally through two of their older vintage funds. Those two older vintage funds sold Cetera to their two most recent vintage funds at the end of 23/early 24. So what that represents to us is something very unique: continuity of ownership, sponsorship, alignment around strategy, momentum, but a fresh clock and a fundamentally brand new capital stack. And so we have the tooling as if it was a brand new sponsor and underwriting, but it wasn't, because the Genstar knows this and has been around the business since 2018. That is very unusual. And then how we try to take advantage of that unusual, that uniqueness, is that we operate with that sort of fresh capital, fresh clock. The leadership team operates on a really clear edict from our owner, which is put your heads down and grow the company, because we don't have to be distracted by the cavalcade of questions we get. When are you going to recap? When are you going to sell? When's there going to be an IPO? The benefit is we don't have to think about any of those things, because we have a terrific market, laid out in front of us. We got great partners, like you and your team, Frank, that's helping us fuel organic growth. We're focused on growth. It's very unusual to have a company of our size with only one sponsor with that kind of continuity that is not looking at their watch, looking for an exit because they just re-underwrote. It is a very unique operating model for us, and we're trying to take full advantage of that for sure.
Yeah, I find that, and there's some, I think that people may not know, but there's some other ownership, which is really employee ownership. Not a huge component of it, but there is a component of that I think people may not realize. I didn't even know that.
Yeah. So the equity that is not owned by Genstar, its affiliates, some of its bigger LPs that co-invest, the private equity term, the balance of the equity is owned by management employees and several hundred advisors that have purchased the equity. There have been discrete moments along the ownership cycle by Genstar where the company has opened a window where advisors can purchase some of the equity. And so we have several hundred advisors that own the equity as well. There's nothing screams of alignment better than you're all holding the same security.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. So when you look at, when you take all of that into consideration, and you threw out a couple of things there, which you can either unpack or not unpack, but where do you see? You came in here. I think we both would agree there's still a long runway with what's going on here, and the movement to independence, and maybe other affiliation options. I mean, not affiliation options, but other solutions for advisors that are looking for something other than the traditional W-2 wire space, right?
Right.
When you sit down and think about Cetera 10 years from now, what does it look like to you?
Yeah. It's a good question. 10 years feels like a far, I'm
Yeah,
squinting, but you and
in
I
our
know that.
industry, that's a lifetime, but that's okay.
Yeah, but it'll also probably be here, faster than we think. So, for me, 10 years from now, we'll look back and a little bit softer, Frank, would be we will have in market at scale a complete range of affiliation models or whatever that market needs. However, the advisors are going to market in year 10, we'll be there. So because we have this demonstrated record of continuing to build out the affiliation model range at scale, so that we are not putting Cetera in a position or our advisors in a position of picking, winning, or losing models. The beauty of our industry is you can go be a financial advisor in lots of different legal entity setups, value proposition setups, revenue setups, pricing setups, and those manifest themselves, those ingredients in an affiliation model, hybrid REA, pure fee REA, traditional 1099, sort of, hybrid registered rep. We have all of those, operating at scale. And I think we're just going to continue to build on that. If I had to quantify it, Frank, I mean, I haven't really thought about it, in 10-year terms, in a while. My hope is we're triple the size in every metric except advisors. And it's not that I don't want more advisors, to find their way and to stay at Cetera over time. But we have such incredible growth upside, just continuing to fuel the growth of the advisors we have. And so it's not a maximum advisor headcount, sort of rubric. I mean, our industry better than anyone. Nobody gets paid by the number of advisors. We're in the asset aggregation and asset management business, and so I think that we're on a trajectory to be 3x every metric we care about, with the exception of number of advisors. If that's 3x the advisors also along the way, great. That's not
Yeah.
done.
I think it will be. So can we just touch on, and again, I don't want to get into the weeds on every single
Yeah.
affiliation option, because I think that's a whole nother hour, right? But can you just touch on what that means when we talk about various affiliation options? Can you just give the audience like a third grade level, idea of what that is?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, in general, because I don't want to go too deep, Cetera has, just under 12,000, advisors across the country. We array those 12,000 against one of five channels through which we organize those 12,000. But those five channels are not an org chart. They're really more an affiliation model and value proposition. And so what does that mean? There's the pure independent advisor, the traditional power alley of firms like Cetera and our direct peer group, where you're a 1099 independent contractor to us that's doing hybrid business, both advisory fee and commission. And you may be a 1 to 5 person shop, going to market under your own brand. We have a large enterprise channel. That's a different affiliation model. If you want to join sort of our firm within a firm, under, more direct local leadership, call a regional director, as part of a larger enterprise, that's an affiliation model. We have a bank program business, Cetera Financial Institutions with small banks and credit unions, our tax channel. But then importantly, we have what we call our fifth channel, which is REA and branches. Whereas the name implies, this is where the affiliation models begin to stretch out. So that if you want to evolve from being a 1099 registered representative in one of those prior channels that affiliates through our corporate RIA, you can do that forever. But if you want to skew and go full RIA to be an IAR, full fee under our corporate RIA, we can handle that also. If you want to go establish your own RIA, but keep custody with us and affiliation with us for, let's call it the equivalent of friendly broker dealer. So the tail of your business, where maybe you're doing some insurance business or have trails, et cetera, we can accommodate that. We also do the outsourced compliance and marketing. So we're sort of a value added independent REA outsourced provider, if you will, in that channel. We call that Cetera Blueprint. That's under this fifth channel.
Mm-hmm.
But we also have a W2, wholly owned W2 RIA proposition, where we are doing tuck-in transactions from outside Cetera into that W2 channel, but we're also doing succession deals, as you know, is a white hot topic in the industry, where as principals from legacy channels, if you will, other former channels that they were operating in at Cetera, when those principals are ready to retire, we're open to buying that business and transitioning it into our W-2 channel. But then the last one to highlight would be also in that fifth channel, Cetera Investors. It's our supported independence branch system. So we have 40 branches across the country, branded Cetera Investors, and it's supported independence where Cetera has the lease, Cetera has the branch support staff on our payroll, and the advisor, sort of joins us on an independent contractor basis in a turnkey situation, with space, branch support, all the resources they need, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a this is what makes the pitch a little complicated
Yeah,
about
right.
Cetera. There's a lot there, but if we're doing our job, and you do a great job of it, you and your team, but if we're all doing our job, it's just classic sort of forensic sales, which is really talk to the prospect, understand how they're trying to go to market, if they're going to make a transition, what they're looking for, and we direct them, down the chute to say, well, you should talk to, this team in
Right.
this particular channel or affiliation model, and that's working really, really well right now. But it takes a second, to really engage and understand consultative selling. What's the right solution for the person I'm talking to, and let's shunt them down the right way.
Yeah, and that's what I think has been helpful for me working with Cetera now for probably 12 years now. And it's sort of evolved, but not like dramatically evolved. There's always been the different channels. You've made it easier by sort of bringing them all, for the most part, onto sort of like fewer broker dealers, because before
Right.
there was different broker dealers.
Right.
Now
Right.
it's gotten much better. But it definitely is. I love the term forensic consulting. Uh, yeah, that's what all this stuff up here is all about.
Yeah.
And just understanding, because it's I think a lot of advisors think, well, I'm going to go from W-2, it's just 1099 and that's it. Well, not really. There's like all these different options within 1099. I'm working with an advisor right now. He's a $2 million advisor, and I'm introducing him to Cetera, but through the I'll call it your Cetera Advisor channel, where you have sort of like service options, right? You have
Yep.
Summit and a couple other firms, right?
Exactly.
Because
Exactly.
this particular advisor wants to be independent, but doesn't want to stand it up, doesn't want to, needs additional support. And what I think is I believe, and then location wise, it's a good fit for them. But
Yeah.
I
So,
think,
so Frank, you sparked one other thought. So let's keep it in a recruiting context, for obvious reasons. The important thing around this range of affiliation models that we have is that it's very unusual that an individual or team will take an affiliation model and stay in that for the duration of their entire career. And so what's important to us is that affiliation model is also an evolution path for advisors already within, the Cetera ecosystem, that if a traditional 1099 independent practice on their own in a particular community, wants to join, our corporate RIA and go sort of full fee, or leap all the way to, sort of, I'm going to sell my book into the W-2 channel. I'm happy to stay a W-2 employee. That kind of path we make available to all of our advisors all the time. So we use the phrase, we want Cetera to sort of be a forever home. If there's nothing more frustrating to me than when we lose an advisor or a team to a solution that we have right here,
right,
inside the four walls of Cetera. And so, by the way, that's happening less because this affiliation model range is hardening, and we're perfecting,
yeah,
the syndication, the knowledge of this is what it is, this is how you can engage it. So you really don't need to leave. The second thing I'd say, maybe it's a different topic, Frank, but I referenced earlier, this affiliation model allows us not to have to pick winners or losers, sort of winning or losing models. But what all those affiliation models, all our channels have in common is we're investing behind what we think is the durable winning client value proposition, which is a planning-based relationship, largely manifest through an advisory sort of set of solutions, but an absolute long-term strategic embrace of brokerage, insurance, tax, and trust and estate planning. And I don't know what to call that. We call that simplistically hybrid. I would call that super hybrid. And so for those that feel, nope, I'm going all in, full fee, full fiduciary REA, we can handle that. And that's great. But for me to be a fulsome financial planner to handle an entire household sort of set of needs, you got to source some of these other capabilities somewhere.
Yeah.
And I love that Cetera has a very scaled strategic embrace of all those capabilities that can be rendered across that full affiliation model spectrum. And I personally believe we're just getting going in leaning into that. I mean, Cetera's history,
Yeah.
largely through acquisition. We have a lot of prior sort of insurance-based networks and teams. We call them communities that have come out of it, so an insurance captive. I mean, these are some of our fastest organic growing communities in advisory and just overall growth. Yes, they may have formed an early expertise around insurance, but I don't know about you. Every household I've met has insurance or has
Well,
insurance needs. And so we don't run from those things or turn our nose up because it's a legitimate part of a household financial plan.
yeah, I'm always surprised when advisors shun the idea of doing insurance. And I'm like, well, that insurance agent is going to be doing advisory business and wealth management also. And so
Yeah,
they're going to buy insurance. And if they don't buy it from you, they're buying it from somebody else. And you're just giving them an open door to come and get the rest of the account.
yeah,
And I just,
exactly right.
it's just, to me, it's just strange. Let's just move on for a second. I want to talk about, you sort of answered it in a way, but having with your experience with Fidelity and the custody side, and I know that, and many people may not know this, but you just recently, you're primarily with Pershing in terms of custody and clearing. You do have a small self-clearing arm. Then you acquired Avantax about 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah,
Again, it's all been a blur.
End
Yeah,
of 23, it closed. Yeah.
right. And that came with Fidelity. Now you're opening it up to everybody. So it's maybe not an obvious question, but there's a lot of people that talk about, well, at some point Cetera is going to have to go all self-clearing, right? But it seems like where your feet are going, right, is the opposite direction. So can you just touch on that, in terms of why one is better than the other or not?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question. I love where you just ended that question. I don't know that one's better or not. The reason why we are maintaining multi-custody, multi-clearing, including our own, is it affords us the maximum addressable market for growth. That growth can come through M&A, and if we're acquiring someone that is at Pershing or NFS Fidelity or Schwab, I'll come back to that, then we have a chance to minimize some of the friction in transition when we can replicate the clearing and custody environment as one example. So in an M&A context, it helps. In a recruiting context, it certainly helps. That if we're recruiting someone from an NFS firm and now we have an NFS instantiation, that helps. So to, again, minimize friction to maximize addressable market. It gets all the way down to the client household. If a client household is used to having their accounts at Fidelity, or at a Pershing firm, it is a level of comfort and security that, yes, there is change and friction in any conversion, but there's a familiarity once they get here when the carrying firm is the same. That's sort of, maybe meta point one. The meta point two, Frank, is that we have a scaled footprint at each of Pershing and Fidelity NFS and our own Cetera Investment Services, CIS, our self-clearing, self-custody, and Charles Schwab, believe it or not, and Schwab. We have tens of billions of dollars in custody at Schwab. And why does that matter? That's not being boastful. Why it matters is that we have really good terms in place with every one of them. So it's not as if we decided we're going to go all self-clearing or we're going to put these other firms in competition and go all in on one over all the others. We are not going to get a windfall, sort of cost advantage there. We will get a cost advantage, just to be clear, by the scale. But the unit economics we have in place with each of those multiple clearing firms and custodians is still a really good unit economic sort of paradigm where we are not being economically disadvantaged. The upside of that maximum sort of addressable market dwarfs the relative inefficiency we might be experiencing by having multiple firms. And again, beauty of being private with Genstar Capital. Our board and owner understands that precisely. And look, maybe the addressable market advantage wanes at some point. Things are settling down, consolidation wave is turning. I mean, who knows what may turn that sort of path of growth. So then maybe that advantage will shrink and we'll think about the environment differently. But back to where I started, we don't have to worry about that right now. We're achieving growth and growth momentum by having that multi-custody and clearing capability. And the specific use case would be, again, thanks to you and others, Frank, we have a number of really, compelling recruiting transitions scheduled between now and the end of the year. And some of them were pushed to the end of the year because these recruits waited for NFS. They're coming from an NFS firm. They want to keep NFS as the clearing firm. And we just put, as you referenced, NFS into the Cetera, sort of brokerage technology and operations environment here earlier this fall. So now we're bringing in recruit teams to sort of legacy Cetera, if you will. We've maintained it, as you referenced, for Avantax as it's converted in, and prospective recruits were open to waiting for that. Really important that we had it. Could we have sold them on, hey, you're going to have to make a transition to Pershing? Yeah, we've done it all the time, but not having to was definitely a compelling part of the pitch.
So what do you say about when people say, yeah, but in order for them to increase their economic advantage, like an LPL or a Raymond James or an Ameriprise, I'll just say because those are the three sort of main ones that are self-clearing, that eventually they're going to have to do that because that's where that's where all the money's made.
Yeah.
I'm just being facetious about that. I know.
Yeah. I mean, look, there can be more money made there. It's not where all the money is made. So again, I don't want to repeat myself, but I think that the team has done a great job ensuring very strategic and cost-effective relationships with each of our outside clearing firms and custodians. And again, I'm not naive. Could we get some profitability pickup? Sure. But you got to go through the conversion in order to get there. And right now, the value is being created by that optionality, not by, oh my gosh, we have to maximize, every penny of expense as a way to sort of grow. We're growing top line, and we have a reasonable bottom line by maintaining the multi-custody and clearing range.
Okay, so I appreciate the answer and the transparency. Thank you. Very much appreciated. I want to talk about, you mentioned sort of, we talk about growth and acquisitions and some stuff going on, not individual recruiting, but really acquisitions. And for a couple of years, you were sort of on a little bit of a growth acquisition tear, right? Seems to have slowed down a little bit. Do you still see acquisitions, and this may be a industry consolidation question, but do you still see some acquisitions on the sort of on the horizon that would make sense for you because you have these affiliation options, right? So I'd imagine when you look at a target, you're like, okay, well, where does that fit? Like, how are you seeing now acquisition as part of your growth plan?
Yeah, good question. It's still a significant primary, component of our growth plan. We like to say at Cetera, M&A is not a side hustle. I mean, we have a dedicated corporate development team. Think of it as we have an in-house investment banking team. We have a dedicated M&A integrations team. We have a dedicated, M&A securities attorney. Like this is not a hobby for us. It's a significant part of the strategy. You're exactly right. The last several years has been on a cadence of some, increasingly larger and larger acquisitions that have been done. The most recent large one was Avantax 2 years ago. That was a big one, and the full conversion was not completed until just earlier this fall.
Right.
And by the way, we still have a lot of important work to do, even off the back of that conversion. So, but it's we've not been completely out of market there, Frank. So two things to mention. One, I don't know that a deal gets done in our industry where Genstar or Cetera doesn't get a look. Doesn't mean we don't prevail, but we're active. You just don't win them all, as the expression goes. The second is we've done a ton of smaller deals, and we've done a handful of, I call sort of adjacency deals that are really important to our future. What do I mean? We've done, I believe it's over 40 small transactions since Cetera and Avantax came together in the last 2 years. Those are tuck-ins. Those are succession deals, sort of the real small deal. By the way, those are really important for this forever home notion, affiliation model, manifestation notion, value creation, give it whatever buzzword you want, really important. So there is an accelerating volume of those kinds of deals that are being done as sort of solutions and again, growth vectors for us. Yeah, that's a key part of it. But then the idea of the sort of adjacency. So while it came as part of the Securian transaction, we bought a trust company. That's now a Cetera branded trust company. We broadened its capability set. It's got a national charter. It's exposed now to the whole Cetera system. We bought an insurance, BGA from one of our practices. It's called NFG. Why did we do that? Insurance is a threshold part of our offering. And so it allows us to step into contracting with carriers and product providers. We're investing heavily behind the feet on the street, to sort of support, insurance as a strategic component of a financial planning based solution set, et cetera, et cetera. And we're constantly seeking the other adjacencies that we've identified to continue to round out the solution set, round out the addressable market for our Cetera advisors to be able to, step into to help build their book of business. And then the last thing I would say is earlier this year, though, we also closed on the acquisition of Concourse Financial, which was, a plus or minus 400 advisor network.
I know them.
Yeah, out of the Protective Life, sort of holding company. I mean, just an unbelievable team, unbelievable leadership. Been a really, really great, transaction for us. I think for the Concourse advisors also, they're part of a bigger organization, a great offering, great technology. We've retained their local field leadership. That's part of our ethos of channels and communities. And so again, not as big a headline, not as big a font in the headline grabbing transaction, but you referenced it. We're still a consolidating market, and we will be on the balls of our feet in that consolidation. But we're really disciplined acquirers. Got to be the right fit, et cetera, et cetera. I don't want to diminish that, but Genstar and Cetera are 7 years in to having a very keen understanding of how to create value. So we're disciplined on the entry multiple because we got to be disciplined on an exit multiple. And so I'm very proud that the team, before I got here, puts us in a position to really see everything, but we pass on a lot because we have very high standards, for M&A.
Sure. I'm just looking at the time, and I got really two more questions I want to go over. One could be pretty short, but your counterpart over at LPL, Rich Steinmeier, who I like and admire. I'm friends with Rich, and I think he's an awesome individual. He made a comment about, the sort of like march to 50,000 advisors, right? They're like 33,000 or something like that with the Commonwealth merger. I'm curious, at 11,000 and change or 12,000 and change, right? When you heard that, what went through your head? Like 50,000 advisors, like.
Yeah. I like Rich also, and give him a lot of credit for what he and the team are doing. They're a formidable competitor, but they're also important for our broad category, right? So, so give them a lot of credit. I mean, look, at 30 some thousand, it's natural for him to say on to 50. There's no doubt about it. That's not the trajectory that we're on. And I, in my view, to be at 50,000, it's untenably expensive for them alongside 50,000 to be able to credibly say, but we'll make sure we preserve community and affinity and your unique value proposition and multiple affiliation models and flexibility and transition with you. And to me, it's a scale play, and that's not a bad thing. It's a scale play. And as a public company, he's got a set of shareholder stakeholders that's changing every second of every day, unlike us, who has a very stable equity ownership base that's deeply involved and supportive of our strategy. So, it's a different ownership stakeholder base that I suspect drives a different narrative into the market. Again, I think LPL is a very formidable firm. I wouldn't bet against them, certainly. We're just on a different trajectory.
Okay, cool. I again appreciate the transparent answer. Um, so every firm, including your own, and we're not going to get into the numbers here. I just don't do that. But it's known that you've been really aggressive on your offers, right? On transition deals. A lot of it started earlier in the year. I think across the board with all firms, not just yours. When the Commonwealth opportunity came up in the marketplace with tremendous advisors, it's almost like you all got together and said, listen, why don't we just all increase our deals all at the same time?
Okay, we didn't do that. We didn't do that.
No, yeah, there's no collusion going on. There's no collusion.
Yeah.
But I think you all recognize independently of each other, like this is I won't say a one-time, when will it ever happen again with that kind of advisors workforce and all that other stuff? But with that said, interest rates keep coming down. Do you see a time where you have to pull back on your deals because of interest rates, or and maybe that's more of an industry thing? Do you see firms pulling back on their deals? I don't want you to have to sort of get into baseball, but with interest rates coming down, I mean, it affects deals, right?
It can affect deals, no doubt about it. To me, the most important thing is how prevalent is client cash sweep in the aggregate revenue or profitability being created by a firm. And I give a ton of credit to the executive team of Cetera and Genstar over many years to mightily differentiate, diversify the revenue streams. Client cash sweep is really important for Cetera. It is not the majority of our revenue or earnings base. So it is important. It's cash flow creating. I'm not going to be naive there. But we are less indexed, to client cash sweep than many other firms, including some firms that I hear. I'm surprised how over-indexed they are to client cash sweep. And so that it might hit them sooner than us. Let's put it that way. That's sort of point one. Point two is, as well as anyone, there are only a handful of firms that have the scale to be paying sort of the premium deal right now. We're fortunate to be one of those firms. We have a scale effect where we can pay a premium deal for the right, really high quality teams. And there are a number of really good high quality teams that are looking around right now. But again, back to the M&A point a minute ago, we're disciplined recruiters. We maniacally review, if we pay X, what is the return profile against a set of assumptions we have around what's going to convert to us and how that team might grow. Even at the deals that are being paid today, and we're in that smaller group that can pay a premium rate, there's still a good return for us and the advisor in order to affiliate. And so, and you didn't say this, I know you don't believe this. It's not like the Fed's going to drop 25 basis points and the deals are going to course correct, immediately. It's really going to be rooted more to just the embedded profitability and cash flow creation by these firms, and is the cash flow and the P&L capacity there to keep paying these deals. I know that's the essence of what you're asking. And, I like our chances because of the scale effect and the diversification we have of our revenue and earnings in addition to client cash sweep.
Okay, cool. Last question, and I'm going to sort of lead the witness on this one because there's something I want you to talk about. I was basically going to ask you, like, what are one or two things that an advisor may not know about Cetera that are really unique to them that help them grow when they come here, right? Because what I talk about with advisors is like, listen, you need to go to a firm that, you're escaping a problem that your other firm, or that you don't like your other firm for whatever reason, right? But you still have to choose a firm that's going to be able to support and help you grow your business if that's what you want, right? Down the road. And so it's not just about, I'm going to go to that firm because they pay me the best deal and I can move all my accounts. And then you're just basically doing it on your own again, right? What are one or two things that advisors should know about Cetera that make you and your service unique? And hint, one of those things has to do with a growth team. And I just want
that's one of the two. Don't worry.
Leading the witness, Your Honor.
Yeah, that's one of the two. It's number two of two. Number one of two, I'll be quick because we already covered it. What makes us unique? What makes us unique? There are others that do it, but only a couple. Is this idea of you can come to us, change with us, sell to us, you never have to leave. This come to Cetera, stay with Cetera as your forever home. You can evolve your affiliation model, business model through time, and you can sell to us or one of our other practices. So you can even retire, exit, monetize. So, and again, to be blunt, I didn't know that until I started, looking into, the transition into Cetera. I'm like, wait, we can do that? I mean, really, really interesting. Because again, as I referenced, it really breaks my heart when someone leaves us to sell to someone else into a succession trade, what effectively is a succession or retirement trade. That's one. But number two is, and it gets back to why, I want us to be 3 times our size in 10 years in every metric other than potentially the number of advisors, because we can not be on a trajectory to 50,000 advisors and still get incredible growth because we're fueling growth. The marginal dollar of investment at Cetera is going into our marketing and solution space and the regional growth teams, the field teams we put against each of our practices to co-create business plans with the advisors that we serve, to put our name next to several work streams to pursue the achievement of that business plan, to sit regularly and to be held accountable to, hey, Cetera, you're going to do X, Y, and Z. Why aren't you? We're falling behind there, or hey, you're way ahead. And the seminal part of that plan is what needs to be done to drive our practices, our advisor practices, organic growth. One example. Under Michael Zuna, our chief marketing officer, we have a program called Growth Line, which is I'm gonna undersell it by giving it a tagline. It's effectively an outsourced CMO to our advisor practices. It is a highly invasive, high touch audit of your digital practices, audit of your materials, audit of your brand, your pitch, the vernacular you use, and we will partner for as long as it takes with these firms to fundamentally alter their own marketing strategies, plans, digital properties, social campaign, brand, website, you name it. We've done that for, I don't want to give all the numbers, hundreds and hundreds of firms. And there is an equally long line of firms that want to get engaged in that proposition. And to me, it's just us evidencing we're putting precious resource behind the growth of the advisor firms that we serve. And it's a pretty simple rubric. I mean, we're not going to get our organic growth hit our aspiration unless they do. So we're putting our money where our mouth is. But it's this idea of it's rooted in a jointly created plan with joint accountability between Cetera Home Office and the advisor practice that we're supporting, and we're sort of working on the growth plan together. And I believe maybe it's a bit of a cheesy place to potentially end, Frank, but I believe one of the most valuable assets we have at Cetera, a firm of our size and our reach, is sort of best practices. We know what good looks like, in a firm, which means we know what less good looks like. And it's not enough to go to an advisor and say, you should A, B, and C. You should do more of A, B, and C and less of X, Y, and Z. It's like, hey, let's partner up so that we can help you do more A, B, and C, and we can help you do less of X, Y, and Z. That's you referenced it. We fundamentally altered our org design, our resource allocation to push as many of these growth-oriented resources out to the line of scrimmage, as close to those advisors and practices as humanly possible, so that those growth resources we put on the field next to that advisor deeply understand that practice. Right. And that practice is not always calling back to, Department A in San Diego, Department D in San Diego, but it is their team dedicated to them, and they're all incented to drive the growth of that practice.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the that's what makes the fact that you have these affiliation options, is again this sort of a corny way of saying it, but like making a big firm feel small, right? Because it's 12,000 advisors, but it's not like 12,000 advisors calling 1-800 Cetera.
Exactly.
Right? There are different affiliation options, which means there's more high touch, and that touch that a lot of advisors need to help them grow. So,
and those affiliation options, that's where we call those communities across the affiliation models. The point is they have dedicated leadership and dedicated resources. So to that advisor within a particular community, so let's call it the prior Securian, those several hundred advisors, they still are their own community called Cetera Wealth Management Group. And so they don't have to always come to the San Diego home office for help or escalation or exception. They have their existing leadership, the prior leadership, still there doing an amazing job, and they have a dedicated resource base to try to resolve issues and drive growth that they're trying to achieve, the growth that they're going after. So it's a really distinct advantage.
Yeah, it's like I did a podcast a couple of years ago. Maybe it was even during COVID with Adam Antoniadis, and when he described it as a community, it was sort of like it's like going to a university. And within the university, there are different majors, right?
Yeah.
And your focus, and it's the same kind of thing. So Cetera is the university, and then there are majors within there that you can really then focus on your, what you're trying to get accomplished. So
that's it.
Anyway,
yeah, that's
so I'm looking at the time. I just want to say thank you very much. Any parting words? Any parting words to the audience that's listening when they think, Cetera, whatever. It's too big or whatever. Any parting words to an advisor that might be considering or is currently maybe talking to Cetera right now?
Yeah,
but hasn't made a decision.
Look, first of all, thank you, Frank, would be one parting word. Appreciate the chance to spend time with you and to join your podcast here. But the second thing is, look, my parting words would be this is still, it's never been a better time to be in the wealth management business, but the business is changing. And it's important that you have a partner that can't predict all the change, but has a sense of the trends driving change and can react to make sure that you as the advisor have the model, the resources, the support in order to take advantage of offense of those changes and not be on your heels and being forced to react to it. And I absolutely love the momentum that we have underway of doing precisely that. And I have no doubt that we're going to be top of the pack of being able to adjust that way, because it's going to be a dynamic 10 years. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, but you got to be open to change.
Awesome. Well, Mike, thank you very much. I appreciate the conversation, nice and bright and early. You got me up a little bit, which is awesome. And I appreciate the candor. Again, it's one of the things I really liked when I first met you. Like, wow, okay, he's not afraid to say how he feels. And I can tell it's not just like a line, like, corporate speak, right? And so I appreciate that. To the audience, I hope that gives you some color. If you're thinking about Cetera or you haven't thought about Cetera for whatever reason, what I always tell advisors is, like, if you're going to make a move, you don't know what you don't know. Like, if you're going to make a move, you only want to make it one time. So why wouldn't you look at the obvious options that are out there? Even if you said no to any firm, at least you can look at your clients in the eyes and say, I went through an exhaustive due diligence process. But I think Cetera is always up. Look, for me, Cetera is a lot of times at the top of that list, right? And it's interesting. I want to just digress for a second. I have 3 calls today with W-2 advisors that are wanting to learn about going RIA. And I love those conversations, right? And because they think it's all or nothing. Right. Oh, you have to either go RIA or not. And what you're talking about is this evolution. Like, you don't have to do that. And that's part of my conversations with these people is there's ways to accomplish that. So to my audience, Cetera has lots of different options for you. So be open-minded in having a conversation and learning. And I think you'd be surprised with what you hear. I've been dealing with them for a long time, and the message has been clear. So, Mike, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we'll see you. I guess I'll see you probably soon, hopefully. So thanks a lot, Mike.
Under sunny skies.
Yeah, thanks. I know, right? Thanks a lot.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. If you're looking for more advice or solutions on any topics relating to the financial services industry, or just want to subscribe to our podcast, head on over to eliteconsultingpartners.com/podcast.